Alrighty, here we go. Number 2. I'm excited to do this. Gotta hold myself accountable and really try to keep it going. And again, as mentioned before, see how far you can take this. And really just be consistent over time. So here we go. I'll start off just real quick on the day. I woke up and my head was hurting pretty tough for some reason. So I was kind of in a it was tough going in to school today. But as the day progressed, I felt better, and so that definitely helped a lot. I think the students were pretty good for the most part. I've been really emphasizing our routines and expectations recently, so still really need to be on them a lot, but today they did quite well and they were really on task, so that definitely helped a lot. And we finished the day, I think I mentioned last time, but we finished the day by going outside. And before I let them play or, just hang out, I had everybody do a wall sit. And it was 2 parts, minimum 40 seconds. And then if you wanted to keep going and test your abilities, like how long you can hold that setup for, I would say about half of the students participated, which was cool, and had some really interesting outcomes. Like a decent amount of them were able to get 2 to 3 minutes, and then 4 to 5, and then there was like a group of 4 that got upwards of 15 to 20. The last kid, he finished at 25. Now, take into consideration that form was probably bad for a lot of these, but that's okay because they're still learning. What else? Oh yeah, they were up and down. They would shift their position, so I think if we were to do a proper gauge on their abilities, it would have to be strict rules and observation, so everybody has a fair test, if you will. But that was cool. The kid that did 25, it was pretty much like 25 minutes. Yeah, I don't know how he felt, honestly. I saw him a little bit later and it looked like it was, his legs were pretty sore, but he did it. So the day at school was pretty good, honestly. Can't complain too much. There was leftovers from some food yesterday, so I got to eat that for lunch. Didn't have to worry about lunch. But yeah, also real quick, I should just mention that I'm sitting in a parking lot and the sun is setting, so it's quite nice at the moment. I like sitting in parking lots in my car. It's part of this thing. So I'm pretty big on solitude and just being on my own, for a variety of reasons, of course, but like 2 that I can mention quickly is just like 1, I do enjoy doing things on my own. I think it makes it a little bit easier, less planning, less thinking. Like if there's something interesting to me, I can just go do it. And then 2, just by nature of life and circumstances, sometimes you don't always have somebody to do stuff with, so I've kind of just gotten used to doing things on my own, but obviously still love having people around to share experiences with. But I'm chilling in the parking lot right now and the sun is setting. It's nice. In a little bit I'm gonna go grab some food, but I did want to get this done before then. Again, just part of holding myself accountable and trying to remain consistent. What else? This week, overall, honestly, it's been tough. I think, it's been tough. Just, again, I think I mentioned last time, but just a lot of stuff going on all over the place and really just trying to push on different fronts. And I'm the type of person that really gives my all into a lot of different things, so You know, I'm working pretty hard, and that's not to brag or boast or anything like that, but that's just it just is what it is. Is how I tell some of my friends when I talk to them about this. It's like, I don't look at these situations as bad or good necessarily. I just see it as this is your reality. And two things that come to mind that, you know, if this happens to catch anybody's interest, definitely hit me up, because I'd love to talk about this with them. One, there's this thing called there's this, I guess, story, if you will, written by this guy named Albert Camus. It's called The Myth of Sisyphus. And I'll just quickly touch upon it with my basic understanding. There was this king, in some kind of mythology, there was this king that was able to finesse the gods out of death. Like, he died, and then I think he escaped from hell, something like that. And he did it 2 times, and then after that he ended up getting caught. And what the gods did to him was they cursed him to pushing this rock up a mountain forever, for all of eternity. And he had to do this over and over and over again. Every time he would get the rock up to the top of the mountain, it would just fall back down to the bottom. And I guess this guy named Albert Camus, he was an existentialist, and I think his interpretation of it is that, and it's related to the existentialist philosophy, I guess, that life doesn't have an inherent meaning, and if anything, there's a lot of suffering involved, a decent amount of suffering involved that comes with reality and that comes with nature. But despite that, one can still assign meaning to life. And so that's where you'll get a lot of people that, I guess, believe in this, or even believe in it to some extent, will encourage, finding a purpose, right? Something that gives you meaning and purpose that you can do, that is fulfilling, again, has purpose and has meaning to you. But yeah, so that's one way that I think about it. That story always comes up when I think about this, because to me, I guess it's kind of like, it's kind of how I look at life these days, at least at the moment, where it's a constant grind, and every day is a new grind. It never ends. But oh yeah, I should totally forgot this. The key part about this story is that although the king named Sisyphus is condemned to a life of pushing this rock up the mountain, he is able to do it with a smile, right? And that's his way of getting back at the gods, even though they put him in that position. And so, yes, I think Albert Camus, to add on to his interpretation, he probably says that we in life can look at life the same way, even though it is inherently suffering and there is no true meaning. We can still go through our day-to-day with a smile, whatever our circumstances are, whatever our grind is. If you can do it with a smile, I think that's pretty powerful. So that's number one. And the second thing, again, if you've come across this in your own life, if you've heard it here and there, definitely hit me up if you're interested in talking about it, because I definitely am. There's a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. I'm sure most people know who he is, or maybe not. He's a German philosopher, has very quotable, very poetic, that I would encourage a lot of people to go check out. But and I'm sure this quote has come up many times throughout history. It's essentially Amor, Fati, so that's like the Latin version of it, I think, that pretty much means love your fate. And Nietzsche's quote, I'm going to do my best to remember it right now. I'll probably have to paraphrase, but essentially he says, one should not want anything to be different in their life. not in the slightest, not in the past, not in the future, not in the present. If anything, you should love your fate, love your situation with everything that you have. Probably a bad paraphrase, but I did my best. But that's the idea, is that we should all do our best to love our life, despite the circumstances, right? And that's taking into consideration all the hard situations that people can be in. I think it's something worth considering and worth striving towards, I guess. And I should also mention that this stuff is probably not for everybody, right? So if it doesn't resonate, I get it. But for me, I think about that a lot, because I guess here's the example that might resonate with people. At least I can speak for myself. I often will say things like, and I'm sure a lot of people do, like, why me? Why am I in this situation? Why did I get stuck in this accident or this predicament? Whatever it is, why me? Right? And I'm sure many of us have asked ourselves that plenty of times. So I guess in response to that is like, well, this is my situation. This is where fate or the universe or whatever you want to call it has brought me, and I should do my best to manage and continue to find a way through and embrace it, right? Embrace it and welcome it with open arms. Everything that life brings you, embrace it. So nice. That car didn't really go fast. It just sounded loud. Ain't that funny? When the cars don't really go fast, but they sound hecka loud. Hilarious to me. But anyways, I just brought those two things up. One, because it's an interesting thing, and I would love to hear if anybody else thinks about that kind of stuff or has come across those quotes, those ideas. But in relation to my week, right, I mentioned that it was tough, tiring, all these things, but I don't say that to convey like, oh, woe is me type of thing. And just, again, it is what it is. I'm doing a lot of different things. I'm really pushing the boundaries, but it's right where I want to be at the moment. Like, this is all intentional, right? Part of it, I guess I can quickly mention it here. Part of it is testing my abilities, like seeing how far can I go on all these different fronts, right? And eventually, of course, I'm going to hit a capacity, right, or a breaking point, whatever you want to call it. But it's cool. It's cool. It's tough, but I'm learning a lot about myself, and I'm experiencing life. I'm growing as a person, developing, and just seeing what this whole thing has to offer, what I can do, what I can overcome. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at overall. But other than that, though, I mean, this week is also pretty exciting. The Warriors, or NBA basketball, is back, and if you don't know me, I mentioned last time, but basketball, I'm really big on basketball, so having basketball to watch is really cool. Although I don't watch that much, because honestly the games are quite long, so I only watch the Warriors games. Every now and then, if there's a good game on, I'll watch, but other than the actual game, I watch highlights, right? Because highlights are super digestible. I can watch a few before I put to bed. But yeah, the Warriors played the Lakers on Tuesday, opening night. That was super cool. I guess let's do some analysis on that, because I've never really talked extensively about basketball, obviously in my head, but speaking on it will be quite fun. I thought the game definitely had a slow start, at least for like the first 6 minutes, if not the first quarter. Yeah, I'm sure everybody on the floor had some jitters. The Warriors had their ring night, so that whole ceremony I'm sure it throws people off, just because emotions all over the place. You're celebrating, but then you got to get locked back in. It's the first time, and especially once you get into the details of all this, like the Warriors are they have a lot of new faces on their team, so their rotations are going to be all over the place. And because their style of play is so much read and react to one another, you really, really have to be on the same page. So there's definitely a lot of kinks being worked out, but to be expected. And I think you'll probably hear this from a lot of the players too. Like, they'll probably acknowledge the same thing. Like, yeah, first 2 quarters, we're just feeling it out, right? Both ourselves, but then you have to see how the defense is playing you as well. Like, what are their schemes? What are their strategies? And then, adjust from there. I think from the 3rd quarter on, it was pretty one-sided. It was pretty one-sided probably. I didn't catch the 3rd quarter because I had to go do something, but I watched, I picked back up in the 4th quarter, and the Warriors were up 15-20, something like that. Overall, I'm super excited. Honestly, I like the blend of young and savvy vets, experienced Hall of Famers, the big 3, whatever you want to call it, Clay, Dre, Steph, and then you got Andre, just as he says he still wants to get, be a contributor on the floor, but, even if he is, super great. But if not, at the least, he really does provide basketball IQ to the whole team, especially to the young guys who need it, need that guidance. So super cool, super exciting for the young guys too, like James Wiseman, Kuminga, Moody. Super excited for them. I think they all have pretty high ceilings if they just buy in, keep working, stay injury free. But I guess you could say that probably about every athlete, but in particular the Warriors organization, because I think their track record over the past 10 years is pretty impressive. I think if you asked any honest basketball fan, person who talks basketball, whatever, their organization is top notch and their style of play is top notch, and people come away from it as contributors to other teams, which is really cool. I should also mention there's a freeway on-ramp next to the parking lot, so yeah, you can probably hear a lot of the cars, but so be it. It adds to the podcast. So yeah, it's super cool to watch the Warriors play again. Everybody was on the floor, and for the Lakers too, you had AD, Russ, LeBron, Pat Bev. Kendrick Nunn seemed to play pretty well. I don't really know too many of the other Lakers, to be honest. I know they got Dennis Schroeder, but he didn't play. But yeah, it's going to be interesting for the Lakers. I'm not a fan, I'll just say that. I won't say too much. I'll just leave it at that it's going to be interesting for them. Let's see if they figure it out, what they do, what's their play style. Because it's going to be, this NBA season overall is going to be really something, because you have everybody back, mostly, for the most part. So yeah, it's going to be really cool. I can't wait. Let's see what else I wanted to get through. Oh yeah. Another cool thing I did today was I went to go watch my siblings play. So I got a little sister that plays water polo. I got a little brother that's doing volleyball right now. So getting the chance to go and watch them is always a good time. Always good for me to just watch my people, in their element and see what they do. Volleyball is cool. Water polo is cool. So it was a lot of fun. They both won today, so shout out to them. Shout out to their teams. Yeah. And I'll just quickly say, I'm really... my first time watching water polo was this summer, a couple months ago. And I had a lot of fun watching it, honestly. It's I guess you could describe it, some people, if you don't know, it's like soccer in the water. So you're passing the ball around trying to shoot it towards a goal. But yeah, I had a lot of fun watching it. And then volleyball, as I played it recently for the first time in a while. That was super fun. And then watching little bro play, really fun. So I think I'm just a fan of sports overall. So that was cool. It was a good time. And what else happened today? Oh yeah, this is crazy. Lex Friedman, I mentioned him last time. Lex Friedman came out with a podcast that was 7 hours and 45 minutes today. That was it really caught me off guard when I watched it, came across it, but then I wasn't surprised at all. I was like, damn, this is the guy to do such a thing. Highly recommend y'all check it out if you get a chance, if you're interested in podcasts, if that's your thing. Lex is super cool, touches on a lot of different subjects and goes really deep, very open-minded, so he lets his people explore ideas, plays devil's advocate pretty well in my opinion, and has a good heart, honestly. Like, he's really trying to just put out ideas and encourage people to listen and speak, both sides, right? Let the speakers speak and let the audience listen however they may. So shout out to Lex, he's definitely an inspiration, man. But anyways, just a couple more things. Oh yeah, one thing I wanted to talk about in relation to this week is UFC. So this weekend there's a pretty cool match, or I guess overall there's some pretty cool matches that are happening this weekend. And the main card is this guy named Charles Oliveira, and then versus Islam Makhachev, I think is his name. Pretty much like let's call it the next up after Khabib. Like, they're part of the same team, been training together their whole life, and this guy seems to be pretty legit based on what people say. And then everybody else on this particular fight night is super cool too, super exciting, so that'll be fun. But the reason that UFC came to mind, and is something that I've been thinking about quite a bit, is the concept of discipline. And you can probably do, a big conversation on this, much more at length, but I guess for me, I've been paying attention to the UFC quite a bit more as I've watched here and there and just started to follow particular fighters more and picking their brain, hearing what they have to say about their training, their philosophy, what martial arts means to them, what it means to be a competitor at the highest level. And all of that involves some degree of discipline. And it really resonates with me because, again, I was a basketball player my entire life. I played competitively, so I took it very seriously. And one of my first real coaches really put an emphasis on discipline. That was his whole thing. From practice to games to how you sat in the stands to how you walked in the gym, everything was taken very seriously. So that kind of encouraged me, pushed me to transfer those skills into my life. And I think you'll probably hear this, in all kinds of sports from their players will hear this from their coaches. Like, you develop discipline in your sport, and that'll carry it over into your day-to-day life, into your schoolwork. So I've been exposed to a lot of UFC fighters that convey that, because their training is no joke, right? They're going 2 times a day, 5 to 7 days a week. They're lifting, they're doing cardio, they're sparring, they're doing technique work. And with something like the UFC, the details really matter. And again, I think this is something that could be said of any craft, any activity that someone takes seriously. If you do take it seriously, you're going to pay attention to all the little details. So in preparation for this particular fight this weekend, or set of fights rather, I've been watching a lot of the content that the UFC has been putting out and some content from this guy named Will Harris. Shout out to my friend. Shout out to one of my friends. You know who you are if you're listening. That put me on to the Will Harris, and so I've been watching. He has this series on YouTube that is called, what is it called? Anatomy of a Fighter, and he'll pretty much follow. It's like a vlog for fighters. It's a series, so it kind of has that, I guess, series feel, mini documentary type of thing. So I've been watching that a lot, and it's been cool because you get to for me. I think I mentioned this last time, but anytime I get to hear people at the highest of what they do speak at length, it's pretty valuable just to hear how they think about things, their problem-solving strategies, their confidence, their humility, right? That's something that's really cool, like being able to admit that, this was a challenge, or I had a hard time here, or I struggled with that, or I'm still figuring this out. Like, for example, there was one time Elon was on Joe Rogan, and he admitted that he was working at capacity. Like, anything else major was probably going to tip him over. I don't know what exactly that means, and those are not his words, but he did say that he was working at capacity, so he couldn't take on anything else. But yeah, being able to hear people talk at length about what they do is always super interesting. So, and that brought me back to discipline, and I thought it would be nice to touch upon that here while I'm speaking, and given the fact that UFC is happening this weekend. Another cool thing, honestly, if any of that is interesting to somebody listening to this, hit me up. Part of this is honestly just to hear from people, right? Although I do like my solitude and my personal space and my own time, I do like being around others, and I also like having good conversations. So I guess that's a good way to wrap it up. Like, if anybody out there listening is interested in anything that I just mentioned, first of all, if you made it this far, shout out to you. Appreciate you. Thank you for listening. Hope it was engaging. If you want to reach out, holla at me. Let's talk. I'm open. I really like discussing ideas. And I'm about to go get this food. So, peace.